nervous, brave, and excited. No, I was terrified. The only way our society can survive is for each of you to claim your rightful place. Today you will take a test that will help you discover who you truly are. The future belongs to those who know.
Good morning and welcome to the Kuhn Academy for this installment of AP Government. We're building responsible voters one video at a time. That clip of Divergent is obviously regarding factions, which is what we're going to talk to you about today in AP Gov. And it's important to know your future, especially next Tuesday, the 13th. Okay, so we're going to talk to you today about interest groups and factions here, all right? If you look here, this is a multiple choice question from years past, so if you want to pause your video, guess at the answer. And the correct answer is using the franking privilege. Okay, interest groups do not use that. That is up to congressmen to communicate with their constituents. Okay, what they do is testify before congressional committees to give expert testimony, provide some knowledge for legislators. They sponsor issue advocacy ads, which are those ads that are independent of the candidate. They do not say vote for or against. They are just expressing their opinion on the candidate, and usually in a negative way. They lobby federal agencies. That's their main tactic that they use in an attempt to legislation passed in their interest. And then they file federal lawsuits. This tactic is called litigation. You want to write that word down, litigation. This is taking your case to court in an attempt to influence the government to support the policies favorable to your interest group. Okay? Now, interest groups have no legal status in the election process. All right? So there's no laws governing them as far as elections go, but they do obviously play a huge role in endorsing candidates and funding candidates and so on. They are different from a political party. Right? The interest group wants to influence government and have policies passed in their favor, while the goal of political parties is to control government. Right? So they want to get people elected so they can pass policies. But they rely on the interest group to get those people elected, so the two work hand in hand. All right. Now, there's some theories of government as far as the attitude toward interest groups. These are not really big in your book, but they are important terms you might see coming up on the exam. All right. The first one is what we call the elite theory. This is what a lot of the cynical people subscribe to. All right. This is the belief that a small number of rich individuals dominate the key policy areas, and the PACs kind of encourage that connection between money and politics. All right. So because we have political action committees, they're encouraged to donate and contribute. John Stewart did a little bit on the elite theory with his interview from Wednesday night. So if you want to go back and check that out, that would be worthwhile. All right. So the elite theory just have a small number of rich individuals that dominate our government. All right. Pluralism. This was asked a couple years ago, as how pluralism can check interest groups. Right. And this is the theory that many interest groups compete for power in a large number of policy areas. So plural, many. Okay, many interest groups, and the policy that emerges from that pluralism is bargaining and compromising from competing interest groups. So we end up getting decent legislation that kind of pleases everybody. Okay, how does this check interest groups? Is because there's so many interest groups that prevents one from being too dominant, because there are going to be others that are going to have their influence heard also, and kind of check one or two interest groups from dominating policy. All right, and then there's another term called hyperpluralism, which is simply that there are too many interest groups, and we create policies that are confusing and contradictory with each other. Okay, so obviously that's a cynical theory as well, that interest groups do not provide a valuable service in our political system, that there's just too many of them, and it prevents good policy from being passed. Okay, so these are just theories different politicians and different political scientists subscribe to. Okay, pluralism is probably the main one to know if you're going to know one any of those. All right, so we want to ask what theory you subscribe to. All right. Now, in the Federalist Papers, which is where we're going to get into factions here, we question they've asked in the past, and I told you this makes every single exam. Federalist 10 will be on there on May 13th, guaranteed. Okay, and in this one, what did Madison express? And the correct answer is D. Madison said they are undesirable but inevitable in a free nation. They're undesirable because they are pursuing their own interest and not the national interest, but they are inevitable in a free nation because of free speech. You cannot stop them, you can't limit them, because they are going to exist. That is natural. All right? So in Federalist 10 that you read last night, just to clarify, Madison warns of the dangers of factions, but he opposed their elimination because Madison believed that separation of powers would moderate their effect. So nobody could dominate the House, the Senate, the presidency, and the Supreme Court. So with checks and balances, it would merit one faction from becoming too dangerous and dominating our government. By definition, a faction is opposed to the national interest, as I said, and Madison said they cannot govern without impediment. We have to put limitations on them, not eliminate them, but at least limit them. Okay? And you can't, a free government, you cannot prevent factions without destroying liberty. All right, because it is their First Amendment right, and they love to bring that concept up on the exam also of First Amendment allowing interest groups and allowing factions, political parties to exist. All right, Madison said this is where he was kind of incorrect, was that federalism will isolate the factions within the states and make one faction less capable of dominating the nation. And pluralism obviously does that as well, but now with mass media and communication, you pretty much can't have one or two factions be pretty dominant in our government. So that was kind of what Madison, where he erred. All right, so thank you very much for listening to this installment of the Kuhn Academy. Hopefully you get a chance to watch this weekend, and we'll see you all on Monday. All right, remember, we're building responsible voters,